Country podcast, where we discuss the people, places, and events all around Castrum Country. Well, Brian, points. Thanks for coming by today.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, be a fun conversation.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So first off, I always like to start about, just who is across the table from me. So where'd you grow up? What brought you to Moscow? That kind of thing. What's your background?
Yeah. So I grew up in Boise, Idaho, and I moved to Moscow in the early 2000s to go to the University of Idaho. And I'd say for the first 2 years in Moscow, I didn't understand the city all that well, because if you go to U of I, you don't necessarily have to leave campus. I mean, it's a university, right?
Yeah.
But then in the latter couple of years, and then especially after I graduated, I was like, okay, this town is actually really cool. I could like to kind of stick around here. So
what was that like coming from growing up in Boise? Had you been to Moscow before? Was it just kind of like, oh, this is where the university is? It's up there in the north someplace.
I knew it pretty well, actually, because my brother went to college at U of I, and he's 10 years older than me. Okay. So I remember we'd come oftentimes for Christmas, because he would work during Christmas breaks. And then we'd just spend the whole, holiday up here, and like going to Tri-State and what else did we do? Where Logos School is. I remember my sister and I playing around on the playground out there in 1990 or something.
Wow.
So yeah, all of the stuff that is Moscow, I knew about long ago before I ever moved here.
Gotcha. Was it kind of the choice to go to the University of Idaho? Was that particular for what you wanted to study? Was it because your brother went there? Or was it kind of at that time, like, that's where you go, most people? At
the time, I graduated in 2001 from high school. And at the time, there was, Boise State did not have the best academic reputation. I don't know if that's fair or not, but that it was what it was.
Okay. And it didn't have any of the football reputation yet, right?
It was developing that. Okay. That kind of happened right about at that time. And it's an interesting kind of case study of how do you build a university off of a football program, because they have now ascended the U of I in most metrics. And the reason the people know who they are is because they won the Fiesta Bowl in 2009 or whatever it was. Yeah. So, it wasn't, I didn't consider that really an option. I didn't think that hard about it. I don't know. It's like, yeah, that's a place where people go. I knew some people who went there. Yeah.
And what did you study?
I studied history as an undergrad, actually, which is weird because I'm an economist now, but, that was what I was interested in. And I actually had a professor of history when I was just I was in the whole general studies, what am I doing here? Change my mind every 3 months kind of setting for, my first year or two. And then I had a history professor named Richard Spence, who is the best history professor that has ever existed. He taught a class on Russian history 2 semesters, and then a class on Middle Eastern history for 2 semesters. And I was like, I will listen to this guy talk for as long as I can sit here, because it's just that good. So that was kind of why I went in that direction. I was just drawn to it. So anyway, not the usual track that people take to become an economist. But that for me, I didn't really even have interest in economic sciences and data and that kind of stuff until after I graduated and I got a job working at Lightcast, which at the time was called MZ. And I really did find myself drawn to it, but I didn't have any of the, credentials to really do it. So then I went to California and I got my master's in economics at UC Santa Barbara in 2012, I guess it was.
Okay. Yeah. So did you go pretty quickly from undergrad into MZ?
No,
we both worked there at the same time.
Yeah, I think I was. I want to say it was 3 or 4 years or something.
Okay. Were you the work experience in history?
I was actually
Didn't you do something with very
interested. Yes, I did.
Okay, there you go.
Wow.
See,
good memory. Man.
This is I love history too. So,
yeah. Well, this will come back because with the work that I do at Points Consulting, I think both of these things are really relevant. So, Yeah, I was interested in being a museum curator, actually. And I had an internship at the Basque Museum in Boise. And then I had an internship in Rhode Island at, giving like house tours of this house that was built in, the colonial era. It was awesome. Like they had in the colonial kind of tax collector lived at that house, and they like tarred and feathered him during the Stamp Act. And like it had an awesome history. George Whitefield, ate there one time, and I was just like, oh, this is so awesome. Cause their history of the East Coast is so much older.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff that happened there. So anyway, it just wasn't, I think I would have been happy doing it, but I'm glad I discovered what I did. It was kind of became an opportunity through the, what was in front of me. It wasn't really like intentional necessarily. It was just like, oh, I like doing this. Well, I better go get a degree so I could do it better,
Yeah. So you got your master's in economics, and that allowed you to just do more with, you came back to, no, did you come back to MC at that point?
I did. So I bounced around a number of times because after grad school, I went to Virginia, where I had a job working for a consulting company, doing economic analysis. Didn't work out great. Just didn't really like living there. I was a long way away from my wife's family. Moved back to Moscow, where I worked for MZ a second time. Did that for a couple of years, and then went to Indiana to work for a different company, just because I kind of felt like for me to do what I wanted to do, that was the better place for me to do it.
More consulting type work.
Yeah, right. And the offer that they gave me is like, hey, come live here for a couple of years, and then you can work remotely from wherever you want. I was like, hey, that sounds pretty good deal, especially in 2016.
Yeah, that was
really
before it was cool.
Yeah. So I took that option. I lived there for 2.5 years and then moved back to Moscow again. I worked for that company for another, I want to say it was a year and a half remotely before I started Points Consulting in 2019.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
And so what particular type of what type of economic consulting are you doing?
It's the easiest way to describe it is we live at the intersection of economic development, real estate, and land use. So anything that involves some convergence of those factors is something we're interested in doing. Doesn't matter if it's government, nonprofit, for-profit, what state you're in, that's something we care about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that the same type of thing you were doing before with the previous employer?
It's shifted over time. We, the company that I previously worked for, I'd say that their real professional strength was in workforce and economic development. So workforce development is kind of the describes the process of getting people from the educational system into jobs that are meaningful. So there's, all the apprenticeship, job-based training, higher education, secondary, all that stuff, so the consulting company I worked for was really focused on helping make those pipelines make sense and work efficiently and that kind of stuff. And then they touched on economic development, which is basically the process of selling and building a regional economy to have greater job opportunities and greater prosperity. So I was touching on those same topics, but again, I was really just kind of gravitated towards things related to real estate and housing because it was some of the more interesting things that I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned lots of different types of clients, right? From maybe municipalities, governments, and others. Is that most typical that you'd have a government or paragovernment type organization that is looking at that's saying, basically, hey, we want to, our job is to grow our local economy. And so we've got whatever this land, or we're looking at, when you say land use, like zoning issues and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So that would more often than not right now, that's the norm, is working with a city, a county, a quasi-governmental organization, which might be like an economic development organization or something like that. And they're hiring us to understand their local housing market. And when we do that, we we deep dive on the data. We talk to a ton of people. We do a community survey so we can get, the full breadth of people's perspectives on what's working, what's not working, what's missing that they might want to see. We look at the comprehensive plan, the land use plan, the zoning code. I've read so much zoning code, you wouldn't believe it. And then we point out where the gaps and inefficiencies are that might be, preventing supply and demand from kind of meeting up. Because ultimately, as economists, like, you want to let the market do what it needs to do, but there's a lot of ways in which it's not doing that for various reasons. So that's what we try to do. And I always tell the cities that we're working with is like, perhaps this entity, the city of such and such is the one that's paying us, but we're really working for the citizens, because the citizens are going to be the ones that are going to benefit from better housing stock, more, appropriately suited to their needs. It's going to be really quality market research for anybody who's in real estate or development or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say that kind of that intersection of real estate and economic development, mostly are you talking about residential, like housing?
Yeah.
Is mostly what you do?
Right. So let me first go the other direction to acknowledge some of the other stuff that we do. As an example, we're working with the city of LeGrand, Oregon, and it's a 2-phase thing. The first phase was showing that the city boundaries were too small to fit the level of economic growth that we forecasted. And the second step is actually helping them expand that urban growth boundary by looking at the soils data, the drainage stuff, the floodplains, all that kind of thing, to tell them, all right, if you need 150 more acres over your next 20 years is what we forecasted, it can go here, here, and here. So talk to those landowners about annexation. So that one's a more commercial and industrial kind of oriented project. Another example would be we're working with the city of Caldwell down in southern Idaho to do a business incubator feasibility study. So the city, Caldwell, is growing like crazy, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
And their commercial real estate prices are skyrocketing. They don't have any more space in kind of downtown. So the city has this idea of like, can we just set aside a place with some subsidized rent, basically, and programs to kind of help people get out the gate, so then they can spin their companies off and develop big corporate campuses and leases and all that kind of stuff. So we're helping them figure that out. And that one, again, is more kind of commercial, industrial oriented.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Those are always the things that I enjoyed the most at MZ back then. It was working with economic development.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
well, why don't you come work for
those people? I'm busy. I got stuff going. Yeah. Like, those people is just kind of cool, right? They're looking at being very proactive. How do we grow our town? What do we do? What's the right mix? What companies can you attract? And then the wins are always really cool. You're like, they, attracted, XY, manufacturer to their town, and then it grew and all that stuff. Like, it's cool. They're cool stories.
Yeah. Another way that to kind of describe what we do, and I made a YouTube video about this because I felt like I just kept getting asked the same question over and like, what do you guys do? Is we work in the background before the big news breaks. So at some point in some regional newspaper, it's going to say, new company arrives hiring 3,000 people over the next 10 years. Or, developers building 750 new houses on the south side of town. Like, we've been working with that client for like 2 years before that happens in the background. And that, that's our job. But we're helping them understand, like, does it make economic sense? Or is the city going to be a good partner on it? Or is the developer going to be a good partner? Just like putting all those puzzle pieces together to get it to fit. So it's, those types of things take so much background work, especially, the world that we live in now, for better or worse. Cities have an incredible amount of discretion over virtually every step of the process. So there's lots of discussions with city council and planning commission and all, so we're involved in all those kinds of things.
Wow. And how long have you been doing this?
So I've been in consulting for, I think, going on 17 years, and I've been owned Points Consulting since 2019.
Okay. Yeah. 5 years.
Yeah, 5
Nice.
years.
That's a big milestone.
I know.
And how many people do you have working for you?
We've got 5, including one intern, but that intern is becoming full-time staff this summer. So
Wow.
we'll be looking for more interns, and then, we kind of just take it step by step, but I hope and expect we'll continue to grow and continue to hire more people around here.
And you're doing projects all over the country.
Yeah. So going to take a random sample for right now. Colorado, Oklahoma, Alaska, Oregon, Idaho, Georgia. Those are just the ones off the top of my head. So we've got 15 ongoing projects right now, and that's some of the locations.
Okay. And you have done locally, right? So close to home.
Yeah.
Is the housing study that you did for Moscow Pullman area, is that the closest you've worked? Right. I mean, it's in our backyard.
Yeah.
Is that the only work you've really done locally, or have you done other stuff too?
I've done other stuff too for City of Lewiston, the Nez Perce tribe, some private developers. I've occasionally done just kind of these mini market scan studies. If somebody is like, hey, does this idea make sense? Can you help me figure it out? And those ones we have some of those, a smattering of them, that they don't go public because it's basically, they paid for that research.
Somebody's doing like a feasibility study, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a few of those, but probably the most well-known local one that we've done was the Palouse Regional Housing Study, which was in 2019. It was one of the last projects I did before I started my own company.
Oh, okay. So that was with your previous.
It was. Yeah.
Okay.
But, and in fact, I stayed with that employer for an extra 3 months to finish that project.
Nice.
I was like, let me out of here. But I couldn't because I needed to get the job done, and it would have just kind of rocked the boat too much if I left.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that. So it was in 2019. Who were you doing the study for, and what were some of the major things you guys found?
Yeah. So we did the study for the Partnership for Economic Prosperity, which has since folded up, but it was at the time our regional economic development organization for Latah County. And there was a number of partners involved in it: City of Moscow, City of Pullman, Wazoo, I think the local realtors organization kicked in some money at that time too. So they were a Latah County economic development organization, but they partnered with each others to do a regional. So it was pretty unique in that sense that most of the studies I've done since then are for one jurisdiction, in a sense, like the city of Montrose, Colorado, city of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. But this was like regional and it across 2 states, which is tricky. Legal infrastructure, real estate and development stuff is just very different between Washington and Idaho. So, yeah. So some of the biggest things, I mean, we projected that there was a pretty dramatic shortage of housing for the Palouse area. Multifamily, which is a code word for apartments, more or less, is kind of takes care of itself. You don't necessarily really need to advertise it because there are developers that know how to do it and they know what metrics they're looking for, and then they build. When
you say know how to do it, know how to do the analysis themselves?
They know how to build that type of housing.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a different skill set than, the financing is different. The building styles are, it's commercial because it's multi-story and all that kind of stuff. So, the thing about multifamily is that, if you could chart this out, my brain thinks in charts. So this will sometimes be less interesting if I'm doing things with my fingers, but multifamily goes at this low boil and then it's like, boom, 100 units. And then it goes back to like nothing for like 5 years. And it just does. Most places it does that, including Moscow Pullman, because you build a huge apartment complex. And then those builders know that we are going to fill this gap for X period of time. And then we're going to wait for it to absorb. And then we'll go do it again, basically.
Right.
And, and we're actually, it's worth mentioning that we're blessed that we don't have to really think that hard about that, because there are so many rural and semi-urban places in the country that no multifamily developers pay attention to at all. Like they have no idea what the market is, or it's like, well, I could build 500 in this city, in the next 10 years, why am I going to drive 70 miles away to go do that? But we actually, because
of the university
market, it's a captive market. The builders know that they can make money doing it. It just takes care of itself. Single family is kind of our pinch point. So we found there was a shortage and that to meet the shortage, it was going to be something like 270 new units, single family units per year over the next 10 years. So that would be, 2017 to 2027. So at the time, that would have been essentially doubling the production levels for Latah County. And I just looked today because I was curious, and we're not close to that number still. So the shortage still exists.
And the shortage in that case seems to have that gap is getting bigger then, right?
Yeah.
If we're not keeping up.
Yeah.
So that.
Yeah. I mean, it is, but also in a sense, like they're tracing out what the demand curve looks like is always kind of a mystical exercise because you only see the people who show up and who actually transact, right? So what does that whole other dimension on to the up and to the right look like? Like how steep is it? How far does it go? It's a bit of a mystery. So, but that's our guess at that mystery is that if we do, 270 a year, that will pretty efficiently meet the market and, will also kind of help keep costs in probably bring them down and keep them from increasing at a really radical pace.
Like housing prices, you mean?
Housing prices. Okay. Yeah. So, but we've never accomplished that. So we haven't really yet to experience that. And again, this was a study that was done in 2019. A lot has changed, turns out.
Yeah.
For a minute there in 2021, we were, Latah County, I don't remember the numbers, but I was looking at the in-migration statistics and the IRS statistics, and it was like, we were one of the higher growth counties in the state in terms of in-migration.
Which was one of the highest growth states in the country.
Yeah, right. So we're probably in the top 10th percentile. That would have been 2020, 2021. It really tapered off after that. That was, I expected at that time, and I told people that I think there's an idiosyncrasy to this. Like it's not going to go away, but it's also not going to sustain at this level. And I think I've turned out to be right about that, at least until the next insane thing happens, and then we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you were looking at a shortage, was that similar to the national trends of kind of post 2008? The housing crash. I know that nationally that's the case that, basically building fell off and has never recovered. Like Moscow Pullman is not alone.
Right.
Basically the rest of the country, we are short housing units.
At a
housing
national
starts are low.
Yes. At a national level, that's still the case. Now I do see markets because this is, housing permits is something that we track in every region we work in. I see places where in 2017, 2018, even 2020, that it exceeded where they were at in 2006. So it has happened in some places. It tends to be in the South pretty often, sometimes in the West in certain types of markets, but as all real estate is hyper local. So it's, when you read articles and stuff about the national market, it's like, oftentimes I think that's true, but also that means nothing for this particular market, right?
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, yeah, that's true. We haven't gotten back to that level, and it's tough to get back to that level.
Did you guys identify some of the main roadblocks to that?
Yeah, we did. So I'll say that, and again, so it's two counties, two cities, a lot of kind of smaller towns outside of the big towns. The city of Moscow has done a lot of really proactive policy stuff on housing. And because of that, you see a market for the size of town that we're at. The articulation of housing options that we have is really pretty advanced. So the fact that you can, you've got large lot, single family, like, up on the other side of Mountain View, you've got kind of your historic district that's kind of more urban density in Fort Russell. You've got a couple of kind of pockets with multifamily. And then you have all the other stuff out on the east side of town, like White Avenue, where they did some experimental, what you call planned unit development or PUD type of stuff at like Tiempo Commons and some of those places that you don't just go build that stuff. A builder is effectively walking hand in hand with the city to say, I'd like to do this to achieve more density so I can bring costs down and, things like this. And a lot of cities are really hard to work with on that stuff, but the city of Moscow is pretty good. The city of Moscow has been great about figuring out what we should do about accessory dwelling units. That can oftentimes be a point of contention in a lot of communities too. So the city of Moscow, I'd say there was less like low hanging fruit to just be like, do these things, because they do a lot of the things. So I think more of the barriers for Moscow and Latah County is just it's hard. We have one of the intentional kind of barriers that are put in place is the prohibition. It's kind of an anti-sprawl technique in a sense that you can't subdivide lots beyond a certain number of times over a certain number of years and stuff. So we experience a benefit from that. That's honestly, like, we all kind of like driving in rural areas too, right? We don't want to see just constant sprawl spreading out in every direction, but it does mean that it kind of limits your options for building outside of the city limits. And we don't have enough builders.
Yeah.
At every level. I mean that I shouldn't just say builders, because what I mean is we don't have enough general contractors, we don't have enough subcontractors, we don't have enough tradesmen, and we don't have enough developers. So since the study was finished, I've had a lot of conversations with people who in that whole world that want to get into the weeds on our numbers and like, if I built 500 in 1 year, would I be okay? It's like,
right.
Well, nobody's ever done it before.
Yeah, exactly.
We have kind of a chronic shortage, so there would certainly, absorption would not be as fast, but maybe, like 270 a year or 500 in 1 year when you're already like consistently super low, maybe that would work. Just, you need, which again comes down to the kind of the unique geography of our area. We're not going to have builders come down from Spokane or Coeur d'Alene. We're not going to have them come up from Boise. We're not going to have them come east from Tri-Cities. We're too far away. So we're a build your own. Well,
yeah.
community.
And that's always been the way I've thought about it. Is I'd be interested to get your take on this. Like, we're in this weird, catch-22 is the wrong term, but kind of this weird in-between state, right? Where we're growing. So we have that demand that you're talking about, but we're not large enough, and we're growing at a pretty good rate, right? Yeah. But our size, we're still starting from a place that's small.
Yeah.
And so, you're not going to have a KB Homes or Pulte come in and build 500 housing units, for example.
No, you're not.
Because that's a low end for them, right? Like that's probably minimum what they would want to do. Yep. And then there's the question of, what would that do? Could you sell them all?
Yeah.
Based on our rate of sales, right? Granted, that's dealing with the inventory we've had, but it's like, you wouldn't. I mean, certainly not right away.
Yep. Yep.
And then there's the issue of, I don't know if the study got into this at all, but price, right? How does that work when, let's say we need 270 more housing units every year. Well, if those 270 housing units are $700,000 plus, that's probably not actually what we need, right? Like that's not going to deal with it. Now,
if you build 500 units at 700,000, you might have problems getting.
Yeah, you just might. You might. Yeah, especially at 7% interest rate,
right.
That kind of thing. And so I'm curious where that fits in, because it seems like that's one of the challenges, again, nationally, not just here, is that new construction costs are so high that it's like, that's not necessarily where the greatest need is or the greatest demand is for housing. And when your replacement costs are that high, then obviously that's just going to continue to drive up, existing home prices too. Right?
Yes, exactly. So I agree with everything that you said. I think that Moscow is in what I would call an awkward adolescent stage of growth, where we have some characteristics of being young. You have, a little kid, and we have some characteristics of being more mature. So you see these awkward kind of things where it's like we at the same time get on the list to get a Target and to get a Chick-fil-A and stuff like this. But we also have, no, HR Hortons of the world are going to look at us. Right. So we're not big enough and we're far enough. It would be one thing if we were where, say, Cheney is located, right? Like 30 miles from Spokane. We'd have a lot fewer problems because those builders could do projects there and get their subs to show up, right? But where we're at, that it's too far away for them. So again, the build your own kind of thing. And there's some blessings to that. You see builders that kind of get the community. They have a pattern of how to do things. We do have some more. Usually those big builders don't do innovative very well. They cut cookies super well. Whereas, some of those developments we talked about on the east side, some of the, I know you had the Wins Company folks on, like the stuff that they're doing. It's companies like that are like, let's do this differently because it'll be good for the community. That's those types of things often get crowded out when you're in bigger cities.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you were just going back and looking at some data, housing starts, we're still not there. Have you revisited anything else from that study or kind of have any ideas of, where are we at now and what's the forecast?
It'd be hard to, I'm a very data driven guy and my hands are in numbers all the time for different areas. I'm not day to day living in the Moscow, Pullman real estate market to be able to say, there's little anecdotes that I've found on occasions where somebody asked me or because I was interested. But, I would love to do an update on it. And I think even if it was just like pulling 10 metrics and doing a white paper, it's like 5 pages, that would be useful. But I haven't had time to do that. So
is there, so you said Partnership for Economic Prosperity is no longer folded since then.
Right.
What's the state of economic development for Moscow, Latah County, I guess? Did anybody take up that mantle?
Right.
Who would hire you to do the study?
Yeah. If it was now, it would probably be one of the cities or, Avista has always been a big player in these types of things because they care about economic development too. Economic development in Latah County. This gets to the other side of the story is that people don't follow houses. They follow jobs and then the houses follow jobs. So that's almost always the pattern. And statistically, the models and the papers that have been written on the topic, that's how it goes. Right. But it's very much oftentimes the things work very much in parallel.
Yeah, I was going to say that's where maybe my earlier term of catch-22 could fit better.
Yeah.
Where, yes, that's the case, but I know I've talked to people who are like, well, I couldn't move my business there because there's not enough housing.
Yeah.
So, exactly. It seems like that's it's
a huge speculative thing for a developer to be like, 300 new homes, here we go, when there's been no announcements about, new company expansions or you get the hesitancy when nobody's ever done something to that scale before. So usually what it happens, so Boardman, Oregon would be a good example of a place that's gone this route, which is, if you go west from here towards Portland, it's kind of in the middle of everything. And historically, it's always just been kind of a small town with a port and a bunch of cows. But next time you're driving through, get off because it's like there are factories everywhere. The place is booming. It went from maybe, I think 10, 12 years ago it was maybe a population of 1,000. Now it's 12,000, and that's all economic development driven job growth by the Port of Morrow County local economic development organizations.
Port of Morrow. That's a flashback because 10 years ago, that's about when I was trying to sell packaging in Boardman, Oregon. That's why I know Boardman.
Yeah.
But it was a long time. It was 10 years ago or more. So I used to go sell stretch film there and bags because it was agricultural processing in the Port of Morrow right there was about it.
Yeah. Well, they're banging now. They need some stretch packaging. So, and when that's happening simultaneously, anybody who's in the development community is like, hey, let's put, 200 apartments right there. So it happens at the same time because people are paying attention to it. And there's, but if there's no signals that housing could feasibly even be developed, then that is a red flag to the people who work on this, whether that's, Department of Commerce for the state, the local economic development districts have a hard time selling it. The site selectors who are kind of the real estate agents of the economic development world, they're like, this isn't going to work. Where are you going to get all these people? So you got to have both kind of moving at the same time, but it's more likely, I have more often than not seen a job announcement followed by a housing announcement than a housing announcement followed by a job announcement. Just put it in those terms.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. The job. Yeah. And the jobs is what that's all the data that everybody's watching right now anyway, too, right? On the national level, it's the jobs data. And it's, we're not going to see a bunch of foreclosures as long as unemployment's low. You need jobs to pay those mortgages and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
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 Interesting. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. I feel like we're in this funny town where it is kind of small, and yet it's the universities. So it feels a little bit bigger, and yet, it's growing, it's pushing, but yet it's, hard to really maybe break through some of those barriers.
Yeah.
But I mean, since your study, there are two, you mentioned Wynn's company, their development north of town, Eddington, south of town. Like there's some stuff, there's some lots right now. So at least there is a little bit more of a runway anyway for development, which, preceding that, there was hardly anything for quite a while.
Yeah. Right. And, you mentioned the cost per square foot, right? Like that's partially driven by these labor shortages, but it's also driven by those distances to move the materials and the quantities at which people can buy them. And the difference in that is really stunning. I don't have a current number for Moscow. Do you know what's cost per square foot for single family?
I don't. I mean, I know if you're going to go hire a builder, from what I've heard, they're kind of in that $225, $250 a square foot.
So $250 a square foot. The project we're doing outside of Tulsa, their cost per square foot, this is per their building permit data for 2022, $125.
Wow. Yeah.
That's a bit of a...
It's been a long time since it's been that.
Bit of a difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Again, if you're anybody who's in that national landscape, you're like, ugh, that doesn't look so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just don't get the economies of scale here at all. Even like Boise area, right? Caldwell, Meridian. We were visiting family down in Meridian, and it's like, you just see basement after basement after basement or foundation going in, all that, that economy of scale of just cranking on those houses. It's incredible. Plus it's flat, and I mean, there's a lot of other things that help, that are hindrances here. But yeah, I think one of the things that I don't know if you've looked at it, but would be interesting is looking at some of the commercial real estate too, because I know from being in the real estate business, this is mostly anecdotal, which I know talking to an economist is probably anathema. But
in a market like this size, it is anecdotal.
Mostly anecdotal.
Yeah.
But I mean, for a long time when I was selling real estate, commercial real estate was kind of at a little bit of an equilibrium as well, where there really wasn't a whole lot of supply, but there also wasn't hardly any demand. And so there were a few vacancies around. There's a little bit on the market. But it was just kind of sitting there. And then I feel like in the last 2 years, all that vacancy got taken up. And all of a sudden it's like, there's just nothing available.
Yeah.
But we're kind of still, it feels to me anyway, like we're still a little bit bumping up against that lack of demand. It's not like there's a ton of demand where, similar to what you're saying, a developer could come in and build a bunch of commercial, right?
Right.
But it's the thing that's changed is essentially all the supply's gone. And so vacancies are practically zero. I know obviously residential rents have gone up, but so have commercial rents. Like it's just really changed that landscape a lot. It seems like that's another place where if we're going to get those jobs that are going to help, fill some of that housing, we're going to need more space.
Yeah. So my read on the commercial market in Moscow is that it's still pretty immature, but it has matured a lot just in the past 5 years, just because you've actually had real companies taking real sizable leases. And so those places that were kind of sitting around for a while weren't really being taken up, were taken up. And then it's like, oh, now we have nothing or next to nothing. And I think it just comes back to you think about commercial is going to be driven by small businesses in a town like this. Well, look at the small businesses that we have in Moscow right now. They're mostly in the kind of card table in the garage, second bedroom kind of stage of development. Like my business was, 4 years ago. I didn't need an office, but I took a commercial lease just, a couple months ago. It's, maybe only a, 1,600 foot little place that can fit 5 people in. But where am I going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? We'll extrapolate that out by the number of businesses that are in the same phase that I am and that you're in, and, all these people that we know. So it goes in, the market's always trying to find equilibrium, but when supply and demand are both pretty small, it tends to come in these like punctuated points where it's like, all of a sudden supply's way up and then all of a sudden demand's way up. And it's just like, boom, boom. They're kind of battling with each other. And as that happens, you start to see people see more of an opportunity to be like, okay, maybe we can actually build a, 20,000 square feet of flex space because, we're consistently seeing prices go up and low vacancy. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. So what's next for Points Consulting?
So we are, one of the things that we're trying to work on is just get really good at the analytics on housing in the U.S. And these markets that we're working in are all very different and very interesting. So it gives us kind of a lab to experiment with. We're in some communities where the median home price is maybe 700 and one's 500 and one's 250. And it's like, oh man, we're trying to build models to be able to forecast population growth, housing unit growth, split that out between multifamily, single family, the stuff in the middle density stuff, and be able to say like, how do the metrics actually affect affordability in this area? Like, this as a realtor that every customer you have has a slightly different situation, right? Well, we're not dealing with individuals. We're dealing with thousands of people in a statistical kind of databases at a time. But I want to be able to tell that story accurately and say, what percentage of households in this location can afford a median priced single family home? You have no idea how hard that question actually is to answer. Like, we're doing that right now. And I feel like we're doing it better than anybody else I've seen, but I still give ourselves a C. Because we're not able to, there's so many other databases that we need to kind of bring in to be able to do that. So we're going to keep doing cool stuff like that. We're going to, keep building on our good reputation to get more of the type of work that we want to do. In 10 years, who knows where we'll be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's exciting. I mean, that's fun stuff. I said, those are the things that I think I find interesting and really do affect so many people. And it's weird to think about too, though, how do you guys look at like, how do national politics, how do national trends affect that stuff then? Because it's like, the Fed and interest rates affect that a ton, right? I mean, when you talk about affordability, really in America today, you're mostly talking about mortgages, right? Like, because that's what most people's metric is for what can I afford is that monthly payment. And when you have nothing else really change that much in a market, but interest rates more than double in the last year, it's like, man, that changes everything.
That's the single biggest thing. And, I'm not a macro forecaster. And I'm also like, for a lot of folks that are in real estate or mortgage or development, like the interest rates are the single biggest metrics. I feel like there's actually a lot of people who have a more informed opinion about where interest rates are going to go than me, because kind of more their livelihood depends upon it. Right. But we do track that. I have my own theories about where that kind of stuff is going to go. But I also, we've seen enough kind of black swan events for a lifetime in the past, 3 years that I'm also hesitant to, to say like, I have 90% confidence that I know what's going to happen. Like, with the election coming up, I also heard somebody say recently that, it was like, greater than 50% of the free world's leaders are up for election in 2024, because this also involves Mexico and a few other places. And it's like, well, that's an element we don't think about very often,
No.
right?
Yeah.
So there's crazy stuff that could happen. I don't know if you saw what happened down in Argentina, where they, from out of years of socialism, they elected a libertarian economist. And it's like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, what's going to happen in that place? So, and then, potential for international conflict, like that always drastically affects what happens domestically with our economy. I don't know who's going to get elected. In terms of the interest rates, the outcome's probably pretty similar depending on who it is. But those are all some of the types of things that I'm like, I don't
So
know.
that stuff is in your minds, but at the end of the day, you're really mostly focused on a particular area, a particular place, what their local dynamics are. And that's probably less. I mean, it's always impacted by those national things.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, somebody's got to make a plan and
move
forward.
Speaking of that though, one of the most fun projects that we ever did was the economic impact of the Greater Idaho concept. So that was one we did.
Oh, really?
2.5, 3 years ago.
I didn't know you guys were involved in that.
We did. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and my goal with that was to write a report that it doesn't matter how red or how blue you are, you can read it and be like, they tried to be as fair as they possibly could. And I think we accomplished that. But the problem with accomplishing that is that both sides are also mad at you for doing it. So, so it was a really in-depth type of thing. We looked at like, how does this affect, income tax between, the people who are in that in-between place? How does it affect economic growth? What sectors are going to benefit? What about transient tax? What about sales tax? What about marijuana tax? Like we looked at all that kind of stuff. And that was an extremely political situation. And in fact, that report has been published for 2 years. And there was a moment for about a week where the Idaho State House was discussing it, and that's it. The Oregon State House hasn't really paid much attention to it. And it's not seriously on their radar yet, but it's always in the background. And I continue to see like big news publications writing about it all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I just listened to a podcast with a guy who runs the Greater Idaho, something or other. I can't remember the guy's name, but
probably Mike MacArthur, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Guy from Eastern Oregon.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was interesting. And I don't know, maybe he was talking about your study, but he certainly made it sound like, we've done the homework to find out that this is actually an economic benefit for both states at the end of the day.
There is a,
I'm sure you could spin it in either direction.
Right. So, but and this has been a while, but from what I remember, the state of Oregon would save $1 billion in annual cost. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing. Because he was saying, they're really statistically more of an economic drain. The eastern part of the state is.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the politically difficult thing, though, is that how do you simultaneously sell Oregon that this is a dead weight and you don't want it, but then turn around, 180 degrees and be like, these are great counties. You need these counties. But so really what we found is that it would save the Willamette Valley $1 billion a year, and it would cost the state of Idaho $300 million a year. But you can start to find some unique tax tools for covering $300 million. So one of them would be, this is getting super nerdy, but it would be like a weight mileage tax for that particular district, which the state of Idaho, it's currently unconstitutional, but it's constitutional in the state of Oregon. So what they said is like, well, what if we had an MOU for a period of years where these any semis driving on these roads have to pay tax according to the existing Oregon laws, and then that gets fed back to the state of Idaho. And then over time, it kind of equilibrates because, those counties become more like Idaho and start to appreciate the the benefits from being, having a lower minimum wage and more, less regulation, all that kind of stuff that actually helps economies grow. So
That's interesting.
So it's true that we found it could kind of, be a benefit to both, but you have to kind of squint, turn your head and say, this is going to happen and this is going to happen.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's one of those things that it seems like that's just so far out and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then you hear a couple of people talking about, maybe it's possible. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thanks,
the time. Super interesting. And yeah, hopefully somebody pays you to update that study.
Yeah,
we'll have you on again.
Yeah, we'll see if somebody on this listening to this can
That's right. Make it happen.
Make a pitch.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next week.